So now we're going to go build on that conversation by diving deeper into Microsoft's Secure Future initiative, which is a continuous commitment to revolutionize the way we design, build, test, and operate our products and services to achieve the highest security standards. To lead that discussion and share how Microsoft is working to make ourselves more secure and how customers are learning from SFI to make their own organizations more secure, please welcome Ann Johnson, CVP and Deputy CISO of Customer Security Management Office, and her panel. Ann?
Good afternoon, everyone, and many thanks to Steve and his panel for the introduction. I'm Ann Johnson. I am joined today by Joy Chik, who is the president of our identity practice at Microsoft. She leads the engineering, product management, and everything else you can think about for our Entra solutions. She is also the executive sponsor of SFI, or our Secure Future initiative, as well as Kris Burkhardt, who is the chief security officer at Accenture. And thank you, Kris, for being here. I really appreciate it. I know it was a trip.
My pleasure.
So I want to start right away by talking about the Secure Future initiative in a way that makes it practical for all of you out there, because I think it's important that we have practicality. And I'm sorry, folks. We're going to wing it. I think it's important that we have practical lessons for everyone. And by having Kris here, he can talk a little bit about, Accenture obviously has both internal security, which Kris is responsible for, but also customer security. And understanding how Microsoft built our Secure Future initiative, Kris was already undergoing a pretty rapid transformation in his organization, but having some lessons learned from him, having some lessons learned from us is very important. If you think about the Secure Future initiative at Microsoft, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a program we've been running for a couple of years now, and we have about 35,000 full-time engineers dedicated to it. So it's one of the largest cybersecurity initiatives in the industry. So for the next 25 minutes or so, that's what we're going to talk about, and hopefully you can walk away with some really practical advice. Because the one thing, I do a lot of conferences myself where I attend, and the one thing I always try to say to myself is walk away for 3 things that you learned. 3 new things that you learned, and I feel like it was a good start to my time. So Joy, let's start with you. What prompted us to start the Secure Future initiative?
Well, first of all, thank you for coming, and thanks, Ann, for hosting this. As we look back for the Secure Future initiative, it's definitely in the backdrop of some of the significant incidents that's happened, that's in our Microsoft environment, especially the incidents that's been the threat actors are nation-state sponsored ones, if you will. So what we kind of learned is, A, the threat landscape would be continuing to evolving in terms of getting more sophisticated, as well as just in terms of their attack vectors, not just going to attack only the identity, they're going to attack across our environment. And we call that sort of the layers of terrain, right? If it's in the Microsoft environment, you're going to have the identity, of course, it's the most attack vector. But it is also through our network, through our infrastructure. And what they're going to go after is our high-value targets, like our email systems, because that is a system to all our customer data and assets, if you will. So that's kind of escalating threats is kind of the driving force. And the other thing we kind of learned is rather than doing security, even though it's always our top priority, doing like at individual product level, like at the Azure level or at the M365 level, as threat actors don't really look at these in isolation. So how do we do security work in a coordinated manner across the entire Microsoft? And then last but not least, I would say the key, sort of changes the cultural elements and the governance model, which is, security is not just the work that to be done by the security professionals like all of us, but also how can we activate the entirety of Microsoft, and also having a strong governance model like the deputy CISOs so the engineering team can just say we got the work done, but more importantly is how do we assess the risk and prioritize the work.
Great, thank you, Joy. Like I mentioned, we also want to help you learn from our customers how they're implementing change. So Kris, what's prompted and what started your security transformation?
Yeah, lovely to be here. So thank you for hosting us. I think for us, our journey started maybe 10 years ago, and really what prompted us is we had a public incident. We had some open storage objects in the cloud. They weren't properly locked down. This was in kind of, I'll call it the early days of the cloud, and that really made us rethink security broadly. So, since that time, we've continued to change and evolve as the cloud technology landscape has changed, as identity has changed. So, for us, identity, tech hygiene, data, all of those are a lot different than they were 10 years ago, and particularly the last probably 3 or 4 years, I think they've just been evolving at a dramatic pace. So we've used all those things. We're really thinking about reinventing our own resilience right now. I think also a lot of us have adopted a lot more software as a service. Our landscapes are very different than they were even 5 years ago, and so understanding all that is important. For us, I think a couple of things I'd say. Protecting identities is super important. In that SaaS world, I think there's, I know everybody overuses it, but I'll say it, zero trust, right? I mean, some of those things really matter. Identity is one of them. I think another item that we focused on is protecting critical IP, understanding where your most important assets are, where your most important IP is, and then prioritizing the controls to protect that and treat that honestly the way it needs to be treated. You could even dive into sort of minimum viable company, minimum viable business concepts if you want. I think when I think about it, I think looking back over the years, I think technical hygiene is probably the biggest one for us. Understanding where all of our assets are, that's a big deal. Making sure that people get into the cloud securely, that they're where you expect them to be, and making sure that you have all of those protections that you want, all that cloud security posture management, that now the data security posture management in place. I think when I think about the Secure Future Initiative principles, for me, one of the biggest ones is really rigor and completeness. Or I guess that's two. Yeah. Rigor and completeness. I think that's a big deal. I think people overlook that. This isn't just a tool to install or an attitude to have. It really does take the hard work.
Well, I think, so we talk about not having regressions, right? And one of the ways we avoid having regressions, because we can do all this work, and a lot of it is hygiene work, and it's not sexy work, it's work you have to do, right? You have to reduce your attack surface, you have to get rid of legacy protocols, you have to get rid of legacy applications, you have to roll out MFA. Nobody wakes up every morning in a cyber profession and says, yay, I get to go deprecate a bunch of assets off the network, and that's the most exciting thing I'm gonna do today. But guess what? It's the one thing that makes you more resilient, as you talked about, Kris. It's the one thing that makes you more secure. And then what you have to do is you have to avoid any regressions. You have to make sure that a year from now, you're not having to go back and do the same work. And that's that governance. That's that rigor that you talk about. And that's the incredibly hard part about running a program like this is Joy runs the program think about Joy running the program across the entirety of Microsoft and driving her peers to make sure not only are they doing the work, but they're making sure there's a proper governance around the work so we don't have to redo the work, because that's when it becomes really grinding work for your folks. Let's pivot for just a second, because I think that these are short sessions and I want to make sure we cover, we're covering a lot of material, but I think that one of the topics that we're hearing about more and more for customers, we talk about hygiene, we talk about resilience, we talk about cleaning up technical debt. The other thing, of course, we're going to talk about is artificial intelligence, because your organizations are running really fast towards innovation. They want to stay competitive, they want to improve productivity, and they're starting to try out a lot of different AI tooling to do that. So Kris, when you think about the pace of innovation, you think about what's happening at Accenture, what has been your biggest surprise?
Yeah, well, I know we're going to talk about AI even more later. I would say the pace of AI. I think we all feel it. I mean, there's nobody in this audience, I would imagine, who doesn't feel it. There's the sort of expectations around it. For us, we have 800,000 people, more give or take, and we're trying to get all of them to adopt and use and become experts at AI. And there's the learning challenge, of course, but there's also the operational challenge and the security challenge that go hand in hand, right? Everybody's trying to figure out how operationally AI is going to fit in, and different software platforms that have their agents, different SaaS platforms have their agents, and now how they fit into their procedures, and then you got to secure all that, right? And you have to, not only do you have to secure it, you got to secure to butcher an expression. You got to secure where the puck is going, not where the puck is, and that's really hard to see right now with AI. So I think that is, to me, that is probably the biggest challenge with AI, is just understanding what that framework is going to look like and getting it out there. We haven't had to do that in quite a while. We haven't had to do that since we had to all go figure out the internet. So it's an interesting space.
By the way, speaking of that, and just I have to have a digression, since Kris flew in from Chicago, the Blackhawks are having a great start to their season.
They are.
They finally got some support around Bedard. Anyway, I'm a huge Hawks fan. All right, Joy, what's been your biggest surprise?
Yeah, I would say, frankly, I would say, first of all, I think a lot of the AI challenges, it happens, the challenge exists even without AI. I think AI just make it as sort of exponentially faster and more complex, if you will. To Kris's point, I do think number one is still around identity, even for AI. So be able to know, I think, and all the customers we talk to is, how do I know what are the AI agents in my environment? So that sort of inventory or the visibility of all the AI apps and agents in your environment, I think that's probably the number one, just getting that visibility into the environment. And the second, I would say, I do think zero trust is important, because a lot of the principle, a lot of the AI apps and such, it is about also over permissioning. And I think just the volume just becomes even harder to manage. So use that sort of least privilege, sort of just in time access control, that kind of permission control for these AI apps. I think that's, for me, in terms of top of mind. And the last I would say with AI, I would say two things. One is, when trying to get in, because it's happening so fast, so it's hard to get in front of it. But I would say to start with is that telemetry, the logging, be able to see what all the apps are doing in your environment. Then you can apply policies and the governance model. And the last I would say is how can we, frankly, really use AI for offense versus just defense? Yeah. Because that's the only way to get ahead of the game here.
So I won't get ahead of it, but we're going to be making some pretty bold announcements this week about securing that end-to-end visibility, observability, management, et cetera, related to all the agentic that's happening in your environments. So stay tuned for something, because if you're going to secure it, we have the chance right now to do it right. We have the chance right now to do this right. As I've been in the security industry forever, we didn't always do things right, and we were playing catch up. But we can get early on the AI cycle with taking some of the lessons we've learned. Speaking of lessons we've learned, Kris, can you talk about a lesson you've learned the hard way and maybe some learnings for the audience based on that?
Yeah, sure. And I completely agree with your identity concept around AI. It's a different thing. It's not a service account. It's not a person. It's something new. Okay, challenges. Backing away from AI for a moment. I'm gonna point my finger at cloud asset sprawl. That has been, I think, for many of us, a big challenge. It's been, for too long, it's been too easy to, put a credit card down. So you have to get it controlled from with procurement.
Do you mean people like in your organization, like shadow tenants, people just doing their own thing?
Shadow IT, just doing what they want to do. It's a game, it's a little bit of hearts and minds, because you got to make it more interesting for them to come into the governed space than to stay out of it. And you got to have a stick to go with that too. It can't be all carrot. So I think figuring that out is important. And then I also think cloud has evolved, not as fast as AI is, but it evolved pretty quickly over the years as well. And so as you're looking around, you'll find something that's out of governance, and you lift up the rock, and there's all sorts of other creepy crawlies next to it that you have to then go figure out. So, Ann's been helping us with our cloud service provider tenants recently. All right, so that's
fun project.
That's been one, and you've been a great help. But all of these things if you don't keep your eye on it, and it's not just screwing in your favorite cloud security posture management tool, it really is the monetary governance, the operational governance, all that stuff around it to keep your cloud healthy. And as developers, right, I think buying into that and making sure that your security group supports you is critical.
Yeah, and I'm going to tie that a little bit back to the AI conversation, because what's happening now in your organizations, whether you know it or not, is everybody's building agents, okay? They're reasonably easy. I built one. I'm not a coder, right? I built one because I wanted to see the complexity of building it. I built a productivity agent for myself that does a lot of work for me. And you're going to have this agentic sprawl, much like you had cloud sprawl. So getting in there early with the visibility, the governance, making sure you communicate it, and you want to help your companies innovate, right? You don't want to be the blocker. You want to help them innovate, but you want to help them innovate securely early so that you don't have this agent sprawl. So Kris, from a practical standpoint then, when you think about our SFI project or your security transformation, can you talk a little bit about what's worked for you? Also equally important, what hasn't worked, right? What are things you wish you could have done differently from the very beginning?
Okay, well, let's see. A couple things that I think have made a big difference. Culture, it's important to get buy-in. I can't be everywhere that my developers are, right? So I want my developers to feel and understand and feel accountability for doing what's right and making sure that when they have security decisions to make, they can generally choose to make the right one in a way that's not so painful. Very simple one, get to passwordless or other methods that are phish resistant, passkeys, right? I think that whole identity thing, it's only going to become more important as the world gets more connected. Like that's how you got to secure yourself. And then I think I've talked about it already, but I'd say secure the cloud, right? Like that's a huge one. I think a tip that I would say that I wish I would have done earlier, and I think this audience will appreciate, is ensuring that developers get onto a secure methodology, secure like CI/CD pipeline, and have that built in from the start. It's once you get a culture going, it can be hard to change it. It can be, I think it's much different now than it was maybe even 3 or 4 years ago. But I think instilling that is like super important. I think one other thing I'll just mention, inventory. If you don't have a good inventory, that's a great place to start. Like start with your inventory, start with a cleanup, and that's going to get you moving in the right direction.
Hey, Joy, can you just, since you run an engineering org, and I know you work with all your peers, can you just pull the thread for 1 second on how important it is? We say it's like zero trust, we say shift left, it sounds like a cliche, but can you talk about just how important it is and what the first tip you would be for getting your devs on board? How do you actually get the devs on board so they want to be part of this process and they're happy about it?
Yeah. First of all, I think both, Kris and you said, to do the work can be a lot of grind work, right? But I think even from the beginning, I very much believe just like you don't want to, sort of the CISO be sort of only the policing part, but how do you change the culture? So very much about how to drive the accountability. So this is not just the security org's mandate to everybody else, versus this is very much built into the engineering org for everybody's job. And to do so, just besides the cultural part as the security as the #1 job for everyone, more importantly is how do we give the system and the platform the tools in a way that just can make developers' job easy. Kris mentioned about phishing resistant MFA, but an equivalent from the engineering side is how do you use managed identity rather than just use a user, user ID plus the passwords in terms of even baked into the application level. So how do we provide these standard libraries or system components, both it's hardened, but also easier to adopt.
And even templates, right? Didn't we do a lot of templates?
Yeah, 100%. Some of the things that Kris mentioned, I was like, yep. Microsoft, we rolled out a phishing resistant MFA use passkeys. I think it get down to the 99.6%.
That's great.
And this is over 200,000 folks across the different ecosystems.
We're right there with you.
System.
I can't advocate that enough.
Right? And then you mentioned about the developer CI/CD. Again, we're using standardized templates.
So standardized developer templates in our
right.
CI/CD
And
pipeline, like 90% now
90%,
of our production environments. Yeah,
and
94%.
the point is
okay.
you want to make it easy, but then it also becomes more secure and it becomes more standardized over time. So these are the examples. I think it's just how to, make it culturally, that's number one priority, but more importantly, make developers' job easy, and they can do so in a secure way so they don't have to deviate.
Okay. Now, Kris, we have published, Joy and I actually wrote a blog a couple months ago, I don't remember exactly when, about our patterns and practices. And this was something that the project formerly known as briefing documents. We had started at the very beginning of Secure Future. Customers were coming to my team, who deals with customers, and saying, we want to do this too. Certain elements, right? How did you deprecate, 630,000 applications, or how did you take 6 million Azure tenants offline? We want to do this. So we started writing these briefing sheets. They've now become our patterns and practices that we're publishing as part of the Secure Future reports. Kris, can you just talk a little bit about those? Because you were one of the early people that we sent them to.
Yeah, I think you were surprised at how valuable we found those.
Yeah.
A little bit. We found them very valuable. They're, look, we're not immature in any sense, but there's always more that we can do. And I actually have a team that intakes those patterns and practices and looks for the ones that are valuable to us, to Accenture broadly, and then we roll them out. We roll them out either in standards, tools, or configurations, and then where applicable, we measure and monitor for them where we can, right? And so it's been, I think, and I looked, and I think we're at the 50+ mark now.
Yeah, we are.
So.
And so for all of you in the audience, there's this wonderful woman in my team named Ronnie. I feel the need to give her credit, who produces these.
She's great.
And we produce them based on customer feedback. They said, okay, you have all this stuff in Secure Futures, and we kind of stack, we vote it up, right? This is the most important one. And every other week we write one, and then we send it over. And Joy and I, we were doing it for about a year, and then Joy and I publicly announced them once we realized how popular they were. Kris, it's great to hear about how that added value. Joy, can you just talk briefly what practices you're seeing that you think are the most important, and what practices do you see, because you talk to a lot of customers also, that are emerging as important for other organizations?
Yeah. I go back to, again, from the beginning, I think there's a common thread. Identities, not just because I run identity org, it is.
You're a little biased.
No,
I'm not biased.
It's the beginning of everything.
It is still the number one attack vector. I think we would all agree, right? So again, goes back to the basics, the phishing resistant MFA. I think it's important. I think Kris also talked about just the sort of inventory and frankly, the cleanup part of it. One of the things that we said is even Microsoft, we cleaned up over 7 million tenants. I mean, it sounds like a ridiculously large number, but just imagine all the demo tenants being created through this conference. In the past, we never cleaned up. I think that hygiene, I think, Kris, you mentioned that is, sometimes it feels like, oh, do I need to take care of this hygiene? But hygiene becomes just little leaky sort of pipes for threat actors to come in. The last thing I would just say is around the secure by default. So we're shifting more and more to kind of, instead of reactively to kind of clean up, is proactively how to bake more and more the secure by default controls into our product, right? A good example is, and you mentioned about these legacy protocols. Okay, let's not support them with a new product. That is a good example of interim secure default as a kind of a mindset.
Yes.
It does require some behavior change. For example, some of that, whether it's application compatibility or user behavior change. I think that kind of increased the posture of balancing security and usability or productivity. I think that's just something we need to make sure they are not off the balance, one or the other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Both of those dramatically shrink your attack surface.
Yeah, especially getting rid of those legacy tenants, legacy applications, legacy protocols. Hear me, cyber hygiene, stuff we talk about all the time. It's not the hottest stuff your people will do, but it's what to talk about. At some point, there will be a QR code that will come up that you can download our Secure Future Initiative, the latest update that actually includes all of the library of patterns and practices. These are, I love showing QR codes at security conferences, but these are secure, I promise you, okay? Not sure I click on it, I'm kidding. All right, we're almost out of time. With that, Kris, could we get one takeaway from you, and Joy, one takeaway from you also?
Well, let's see. We didn't get to talk as much about AI as I think we would have liked this time, maybe next time. Have a responsible AI approach. So, secure, ethical, transparent, traceable, all those things are important. We're all going at rapid speed. It's a race to value for every company. So you don't have to put the brakes on, but put some guardrails around it.
And understand your data.
Yeah,
Data
I'll say
security,
understand
posture
your data
management,
too.
what's
Yes.
going into Copilot is one of the
Yes.
most important things you can do.
Copilot will find everything if you didn't know
Joy?
that already.
Yeah, I mean, echo everything that Kris said, and the last I would just say is I think you want to think about, securing AI the same mindset as you securing the human in terms of users. A lot of same patterns applies. So I think we can start the journey just from that, and then of course there's, sort of how do you automate away a lot of the tasks so that doesn't become mundane, and I think AI can help as well.
I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Joy and Kris. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce one of my favorite people at Microsoft, Mr. David Weston, who is the Corporate Vice President of Microsoft Security. He's going to talk about our approach to agentic AI and security. David.